It was a grey, dreary afternoon when the announcement came over the PA system. The school was going into lockdown. There had been a report of a potential threat nearby, and everyone was to stay where they were until further notice. The hallways, usually bustling with laughter and chatter, became eerily silent almost instantly. Students froze in place, clutching their backpacks, glancing nervously around. Some whispered, sharing rumors about what could be happening. Someone had reportedly seen a stranger lurking around the school perimeter. Others tried to play it off, saying it was probably just a drill, but the tense atmosphere suggested otherwise. Emma, a junior with a reputation for staying calm under pressure, found herself trapped in the library with a handful of classmates. Normally, the library was her safe haven, a quiet corner where she could escape the chaos of school life, but today it felt different, claustrophobic, almost suffocating. The storm outside had started to pick up, raindrops hammering against the tall windows, their rhythmic drumming echoing through the large, empty room. The dim light from the ceiling fixtures flickered, casting long shadows that danced across the rows of bookshelves. At first, the students tried to distract themselves, whispering jokes or flipping through books, attempting to pretend nothing was wrong. But then came the first strange sound, a slow, deliberate creak from the hallway outside. It wasn't the wind or the storm. It was footsteps, heavy, purposeful footsteps echoing against the linoleum floor. No one else was supposed to be in the school, except for the students and a few teachers huddled in classrooms, all doors locked. The footsteps paused. Emma held her breath, listening. She could feel the tension in the room tightening like a rope around her chest. Her friends froze too, eyes wide, glancing toward the library's glass-paneled door. The handle rattled slightly, just enough to make everyone flinch. Emma's mind raced. Was it a teacher, a police officer, or something else entirely? Suddenly, the lights went out completely. The room was plunged into darkness, leaving only the dim light from the storm outside filtering through the windows. The library, which had seemed vast and safe moments ago, now felt like a cage. Every shadow seemed to stretch unnaturally, and the darkness wasn't just an absence of light, it felt alive, pressing against their senses. The footsteps started again, closer now, slow and deliberate, circling the library, echoing off the walls and bookshelves. Emma could almost feel the presence on the other side of the door, patient, waiting. Her phone was useless, no signal, no connection. Emergency alarms had not been triggered, leaving them completely isolated. Panic set in gradually, creeping in like ice up their spines. One of her classmates, a boy named Ryan, whispered, "We should try to get out, maybe the back door." But Emma shook her head. The emergency exit was across the hall, directly in the path of whoever, or whatever, was out there. The thought of moving, of stepping into the unknown, was terrifying. As they huddled together, trying to stay silent, a cold breeze swept through the library. The windows were shut tight, yet Emma felt it brush past her, carrying with it a faint, almost imperceptible whisper. She strained her ears, heart hammering, but couldn't make out the words. Her classmates, sensing her fear, leaned closer, their breathing shallow. Every creak of the building, every drop of rain hitting the windows, sounded amplified, like it was part of some dark symphony orchestrated just for them. Minutes felt like hours. The footsteps stopped, then resumed sporadically, circling, never moving away completely. Emma caught sight of a shadow flicker. Across the glass door, a long, dark figure, hunched slightly, moving with deliberate intent. She wanted to scream, to call for help, but her voice was stuck in her throat. Each second stretched painfully, a suspenseful eternity where nothing felt safe, and every sound could be the signal that the intruder, or something far worse, was about to strike. Then, a sudden noise, books falling from a shelf, scattering across the floor, made everyone jump. The shadow outside the door stiffened, paused, and then vanished from view, leaving the library silent once more. But the silence was not comforting. It was oppressive, heavy, as if the darkness itself was watching, waiting for the next wrong move. Emma's mind raced, trying to rationalize what she had just seen, but logic was failing. Whatever had entered the school today wasn't human, or at least not ordinary. They remained huddled in the library until the all-clear finally came. When the doors opened, the hallway was empty, silent, and soaked from the rain. No one was there, no intruder, no explanation, only the lingering sense of dread, the feeling that something had brushed past their lives, close enough to touch but distant enough to vanish without a trace. Emma stepped out cautiously, her hands trembling, knowing deep down that what they had experienced would haunt them long after the lockdown ended. In the gymnasium, Jake and his friends were trapped in a different kind of nightmare. The announcement of the lockdown had reached them just as they were finishing up basketball practice. At first, they laughed nervously, thinking it was a drill. But when the doors were locked from the outside and the lights began to flicker, the gravity of the situation became undeniable. The large, empty gym suddenly felt like a cavern, every shadow a potential hiding place for something unknown. Jake crouched behind the bleachers with 3 of his friends, trying to make themselves as small and invisible as possible. The storm outside rattled the windows, and the occasional crash of thunder made their hearts jump, but the strangest sounds were coming from inside the building. A low, humming noise filled the gym, vibrating through the floor and walls, almost like the building itself was alive. They exchanged uneasy glances. None of them could identify the source, and yet the vibration pressed against their chest, heavy and unnerving. Then came the lockers. One by one, they began to open on their own. The sudden clanging of metal against metal was deafening, making the boys flinch. Each locker door swung open slowly, then slammed shut with a force that sent echoes bouncing across the cavernous room. The friends whispered to one another, disbelief mixed with terror. Jake wanted to move toward the doors, to find an exit, but each time they tried, the lockers seemed to block their path, or something unseen would brush past them, chilling them to the bone. Then, the whispers started. Faint at first, almost impossible to hear over the storm and the clattering lockers. But gradually, they grew clearer, speaking directly into the boys' ears. Jake froze when he heard his own name, followed by details only he could know, things he had never told anyone. His friends experienced the same phenomenon, each whisper revealing secrets they had kept hidden, secrets that made their stomachs churn with fear. It wasn't a voice from somewhere in the gym, it was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. As panic rose, Jake tried to stay calm, guiding his friends toward what should have been the gym's emergency exit. But the doors wouldn't budge. He yanked at the handle repeatedly, the metal cold under his hands, unyielding. A sudden flash of the emergency lights revealed a figure standing at the center of the gym. Its face was obscured, but somehow it felt familiar. The boys froze, their breaths caught in their throats. The figure didn't move immediately, yet its presence radiated menace. Each step it eventually took echoing unnaturally, as if the floor itself were protesting against its weight. Jake's mind raced. Who, or what, was this? It moved with precision, deliberate and unhurried, but the sounds it made didn't match the way a human should walk. His friends whispered frantically, suggesting they hide in the bleachers, but they could see the shadowy figure turning, slowly scanning the room. A sudden gust of cold air swept across the gym, extinguishing some of the flickering lights and plunging parts of the floor into darkness. The figure stopped. Silence. Then, without warning, it disappeared from sight, leaving the boys in a suffocating, tense quiet. Even after the lockdown ended and the doors unlocked, the gym retained a haunting air. Jake noticed one locker remained open, swinging slightly as if someone, or something, had just stepped out. No one entered or left, yet the locker's movement defied explanation. The friends tried to laugh it off as a trick of the storm or a draft, but deep down, each of them knew they had encountered something beyond ordinary understanding. The experience left them shaken. None of them spoke of it openly after leaving the gym, but the memory lingered like a shadow that refused to disappear. Every gym, every empty corridor, even the distant sound of a locker door slamming somewhere else, triggered the same unease. The whispers, the hum, the figure, they haunted the dreams and lurked at the edge of their thoughts. Even as they returned to class, the fear followed them, a constant reminder that the lockdown had been more than a precaution, it had been a brush with something unknown, something that defied explanation, and something that might still be lingering within the empty halls of their school. By the time the sun set that day, Jake realized something he couldn't ignore. Whatever had entered their school wasn't just a fleeting presence. It had marked the gymnasium, the lockers, and their memories. It had left behind a sense of unease that wouldn't fade. And somewhere deep inside, he knew, if it had been in the gym that day, it could still be anywhere, waiting, watching, biding its time for the next unsuspecting victim. The final tale of that terrifying lockdown comes from Mr. Thompson, the night security guard. Unlike the students, he had seen the school in its eeriest hours countless times, patrolling its hallways while others were long gone. But that night, everything changed. The lockdown had officially ended, and the storm outside had faded into a cold drizzle, leaving the campus drenched and silent. Mr. Thompson had settled into the security office, monitoring the bank of cameras lining the corridors. At first, everything seemed normal, or as normal as the empty, storm-soaked school could be. He sipped his coffee, scrolling through the footage, checking that each door was secure, that each hallway was empty. Then, around 11:23 p.m., he noticed something on the hallway near the main entrance, a student walking. Mr. Thompson frowned. That was impossible. The lockdown had ended hours ago, and the students were gone. No teachers, no janitors, no visitors, nothing. He leaned closer to the monitor, heart beginning to race. The figure didn't move like a normal student. Its steps were unnervingly smooth, almost gliding over the floor rather than walking. He zoomed in. The student's face was partially hidden under the hood of a soaked jacket, but even that couldn't conceal the unnatural way it moved. Then it hit him. There was no reflection in the polished tile floors, no shadow stretching behind it. Normally, even in the dim security light, every living being in the school cast at least a faint shadow. But this figure had none. Curiosity turned to dread. Mr. Thompson reached for the office intercom, intending to call the front office, but the intercom crackled, then went silent. His radio was dead too, the static filling his ears like whispers he couldn't quite understand. The figure on the screen stopped, as if sensing his gaze. It turned its head slowly, directly toward the camera, and in that moment, Mr. Thompson felt the impossible. It knew he was watching. He spun in his chair toward the office door, hoping to catch a glimpse of the hallway in real life, but the corridor was empty. His instinct screamed at him to flee, but he was rooted to the spot. Every hair on his body stood on end. The figure had disappeared from the camera feed, but a sense of its presence remained, pressing against him like a physical weight. His mind raced. Was it a student, an intruder, or something far more sinister? Then, he saw it, through the glass door of the security office, just barely visible in the dim emergency lights, the same figure standing silently in the hallway. It didn't move its head, didn't step forward, just stared. Its presence was oppressive, a quiet, suffocating force. Mr. Thompson's hands trembled as he reached for the panic button, but it felt as if invisible fingers held him in place. Every instinct screamed at him to run, yet he couldn't take his eyes off the figure. Suddenly, it vanished. No footsteps, no sound, no warning. Only a single muddy footprint remained on the tile floor, leading toward the exit. Mr. Thompson's breath caught in his throat. The footprint didn't match any shoe he recognized. It was elongated, narrow, almost too perfectly formed. Worse, it was wet, but there had been no water on the hallway floor. Whoever, or whatever, had been there had left an impossible trace, one that shouldn't exist. Shaken, Mr. Thompson moved cautiously toward the hallway. Every step echoed in the empty building, every shadow seemed to stretch unnaturally, twisting in ways that defied logic. The footprint ended at the main doors. They were locked from the outside, just as they had been all night. No one could have entered or left. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Something had been in the school, and it had left a mark. For the rest of the night, Mr. Thompson patrolled the building, flashlight in hand, checking each hallway, each classroom, each locker. He found nothing else, no figure, no sign of movement. And yet, the feeling lingered. Something had been inside, watching, waiting, leaving only enough evidence to unsettle the mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that it hadn't left completely, that its presence still hovered somewhere in the school, silent and unseen. By the time dawn broke, casting weak, grey light through the storm-battered windows, Mr. Thompson knew one thing with certainty: the lockdown had revealed more than just a precautionary measure. It had revealed something that should not exist, something that moved through shadows, bypassed doors and locks, and left only whispers, fleeting images, and impossible footprints in its wake. And as he left the building that morning, tired, haunted, and pale, he couldn't help but glance back at the school, feeling with a chill that the figure was still inside, still waiting, still watching. Even now, years later, Mr. Thompson recalls that night with a shiver. Every empty school hallway, every flickering light, every silent classroom brings back the memory of that impossible presence. And deep down, he knows that for those who were trapped inside during that lockdown, the terror never truly ended. It just waits, hidden in the shadows, ready to return when no one is looking.